Hey everyone, welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. I'm your host, Steve Murphy, retired DEA special agent and 38-year law enforcement professional. If you've seen the Narcos series on Netflix, then you've seen a little bit about my time in the DEA. For our new listeners and viewers on Game of Crimes, a special welcome to you. You've come to the right place to see and hear some of the best true crime content anywhere. Each episode features a guest so you can hear firsthand, real life, true stories of heroes in action. I'm talking about our law enforcement professionals, our military, and all of our first responders. This is where you'll hear about their dedication to duty, their commitment to excellence, bravery in the face of dangers, and the sacrifices they make to protect all of us. And as an added bonus, you'll occasionally hear from a former bad guy on the show. Now, I know that might sound a little strange, but it gives us all a look from the criminal's perspective, right? And that's what makes Game of Crimes different from so many other true crime podcasts. To all our listeners, thank you all for listening and watching the Game of Crimes. As most of you already know, I'm now posting our guest interviews on YouTube. If you haven't checked that out yet, head on over to YouTube, type in Game of Crimes Podcast in that search bar at the top, see what you think about the show. While you're there, do me a favor, click on that subscribe button, the like button, and feel free to share with all your friends. This little action won't cost you anything other than a minute or two of your time, and it really helps promote the show. Believe me, I know none of this will be possible without your support, and I really appreciate you folks giving me your time. If you like what you're hearing on Game of Crimes, you can get even more content on our Patreon channel. That's at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. There you'll find several bonus episodes each month that cover topics that you most likely won't hear anywhere else. That's patreon.com/Game of Crimes. So now let's head over to meet this week's guest. But before we do, you know what time it is. It's time to get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Welcome back to the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes. Hey players, welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Man, thank you so much for coming back every week. I don't know what the hell's wrong with you people, but I appreciate you coming back. I really do. And I got to tell you, you keep me motivated because this is a lot of work. But the people that we bring on here are the best guests you're ever going to see on any show. I don't care what you're watching. We bring on studs and studettes, one right after the other. And the same thing is happening today. We got a 34-year veteran with the Los Angeles Police Department. Oh my gosh. What the hell is this guy? Well, you can see him there on the screen. I guess he lost his hair a long time ago, but we're going to talk about that. But let me just say, Jamie McBride, welcome to Game of Crimes, brother.
So obviously you're going down to the bottom of the barrel when you asked me to come on your show, but I'm here.
Ain't no way. There's no way. I got to tell you, wait till you hear about this guy.
You're saying you're bringing on the best people. I'm like, who's coming on? I'm like, oh, it's me. I was like, all right.
Well, we were trying to get your daughter Tony on, and she wasn't available, so we thought, well, let's bring Dad on. But we're going to talk about that.
That's what I figured.
See, I can say things because I'm in Orlando and he's in L.A., so you can tell he could probably pick me up and break me in two if he wanted to, if he could pick up an old fat white man. So, but listen, you folks, you know what we do first. I'm going to give you a little disclaimer here. That disclaimer is this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. You know what? We take our stories very seriously, but we don't take any of this crap seriously. We love to laugh at the stupid things that criminals do. And that leads us into our small town police blotter. And at the request of our listeners, you guys, I tried to cut this out. You like having it in here, so I brought it back. But you came in with requests or suggestions that the guest read one of these stories. So I just hit Jamie up with this just a few minutes ago. He agreed to it. So, Jamie, brother, it's all yours. Tell us about the stupid criminals there in California.
Well, we have a lot of them, but in order for me to do this, I got to put my reading glasses on and look old here for a minute. So,
not a problem.
But in law enforcement, I always tell people, I talk to all the recruit classes when they first come in every month, and I tell them and their families, being in law enforcement, no matter where you're at, is like having a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. Yep. Because you see the craziest things. And of course, stupid criminals like this one we're about to read here. So, all right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. California police hunt for doorbell licker caught in the act. Police have identified and are seeking to arrest a man who was recorded vigorously licking the doorbell of a Northern California home Saturday morning. Investigators say that Roberto Arroyo, 33, spent several hours prowling around the Salinas residence while the homeowners were away and the couple's children were home inside. Home surveillance cameras captured Arroyo licking the doorbell from different angles. He was also recorded relieving himself in the front yard. When apprehended, Arroyo will face prowling charges, theft count because he stole the extension cord to the Christmas ornaments. I mean, the guy, he's hitting the bottom. Additionally, he's on probation, go figure. Arroyo will likely have a charge of violating terms of his release conditions for his probation. Arroyo's rap sheet includes prior arrest for public intoxication, assault, resisting arrest, and narcotics possession. Now, this is why you don't use drugs, people, because you lick doorbells. I mean, in California, I'm not sure about Florida, but people pee all over the place anyway. So that wasn't a big stretch. But licking the doorbell, that's offensive.
That's
offensive.
As I was looking at the California stories, and when I came across that one, I thought people are always busting my stones because of Florida man, because of all the crazy criminal stories that come out of Florida here. And I thought this is perfect for the Game of Crimes, man.
Oh, man.
So thank you very much, brother. And let me tell you now about our stupid criminals here in Florida. So after paying $500 for what he thought would be a sexual encounter at a Days Inn, high 5-star quality hotels, a Florida man called cops to complain that he had been ripped off. John Single, 50 years old, dialed 911 last Friday evening, because this is an emergency, to report that he had paid for sexual activities he had not received. And this is according to the West Palm Beach Police Department. When contacted by police, Single began to make incriminating statements, prompting Officer Gregory McDonald to read him his rights. After saying that he understood the Miranda warnings, Single continued his tale of woe. Single said that he offered the 4 occupants of another motel room $500 in order for one or more of them to come to his room and, quote, have sexual relations with him. At this point, Officer McDonald clarified with Single that he was admitting to soliciting another person for sex. And, of course, our rocket scientist, he confirmed that's exactly what he'd done. So, continuing, this idiot, he said that he called police because, quote, after giving the individuals the money, they did not come to his room to engage in the aforementioned sexual relations. Surprise, surprise. Single was subsequently arrested for soliciting prostitution, a misdemeanor, now free on $500 bond. He pleaded not guilty after he admitted everything. And the police report does not identify the 4 inhabitants of the other motel room or why Single thought they were receptive to a cash for sex transaction. You don't know this, Jamie, but I have a Patreon subscriber channel. And one of our monthly episodes is You Can't Make This Shit Up. These are the kind of stories we talk about for an hour.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember years ago, I was testifying on one of my cases, and of course the defendant wanted to represent himself, like they all do from time to time. So he's acting as his own attorney, and he looks at me, he goes, so detective, you mean to tell me that I would have all this narcotics in plain view when you drove up in your car? And I looked at him, I said, well, I didn't say we catch the smart ones.
Did you get dressed down by the judge?
No. After a while from being in court, the judges all know you. And I try to joke around. Now, I wouldn't do that in a jury trial, but for prelim, you joke around. But for jury trial, you don't do that. But yeah.
You got to take a shot when you can, especially as an attorney. Yeah. So just to give our listeners an idea of how Jamie and I met, our regular listeners have heard me talk the past several years. I think 6 years, I've supported the Southern California Game Conference. You can see their logo here. That's what that stands for. And every year when I go out, they give me free T-shirts, and I'm big into free. That's my price range right there.
Free 99.
There you go, brother. So the organizers, the 2 main organizers, are friends of ours, Mel Sosa and Santi, and I love these guys. I mean, they treat you well. If I go out there on other business, I can call them. We go out and have dinner, just hang out. I love going out there. I love the fact that conference, all the monies they raise go to the families of slain officers in Southern California from the previous year. None of us make money going out there. They cover my plane ticket and they give me a place to stay. Because of that relationship, they've introduced us to quite a few other peoples. That's plural. In case you didn't know that, that's Southern English there, Jamie. I'm trying to teach you to be bilingual, okay? Sorry, man. So I just want to mention some of the people they've introduced us to, because there's Alex Collins. Because every year they give out the Alex Collins Bravery Award. He was San Bernardino Sheriff's Office, shot in the line of duty. Miraculous that he survived. Claudia Apolinar, who was LASO, she was shot at that train station over next to Compton that time. That little girl impressed me more than anybody. You talk about somebody's got a can-do attitude. Claudia, man, yep. I got her on a pedestal. I'm just so proud of her. Introduced us to Rick Mazza, who was LAPD from the Bank of America bank robbery, where those two guys were all armored up. Rick Mraz, who was the LAPD captain over Rampart Division when they had a lot of problems there. And what I liked about Rich, not Rick. He came in and he was very transparent. He fell on the sword for the things that he could have done better. Things aren't always perfect in our world, as strange as that might sound. There was Mike Martinez, who was with San Diego PD. We just had him on early this year. I'm sorry. His first 2 years was involved in 3 fatal shootings, and within another couple of years had his 4th. I mean, the guy's just like, some people call him a shit magnet. I call him a bullet magnet. And then they also introduced us to a couple of guys that were on the other side of our thin blue line. And that's Mundo Mendoza, former Mexican mafia. And just this year, they introduced me to Mike Thompson, who was 45 years in prison for double homicide. He said he didn't commit, and actually joined the Aryan Brotherhood while he was in prison for protection. But there was another individual. I can't believe I didn't put his name on the list, because I think you know him. Is it Eric McBride? Does that name ring a bell with you?
My twin, but he's a little bit older. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was that San Bernardino County also?
San Bernardino PD, and they had the terrorist attack. When they had that going on, yeah.
I think he was deputy chief back then, right?
Assistant chief. And then later he became chief, yeah. Yeah,
it's great story. It's just unbelievable. But the reason I'm taking the time to point these out is because these are the kinds of people that mail and sign TR that they don't know me from Adam, and they support me more than anybody else here with Game of Crimes. And even when I still had Morgan on here as a co-host, they treated him like family as well. So that's how we met. And then on that same Patreon subscriber channel I was telling you about, each month I watch a police movie and we critique it. So it's my partner came up with this thing called the narco meter, and we base it from 1 to 10 kilos, 10 kilos being really good. And we based our analysis on accuracy, believability, and authenticity. And last month's movie was this movie I'd never heard of. I don't know why, but it's called End of Watch. I think you've heard of that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's had Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena in it, partners. And so after I watched the movie, I loved it. It got the highest rating of any movie we've ever rated here on the narco meter. I gave it 9 kilos. So as I was doing research to do the episode, I found that it's based loosely on the careers of 2 LAPD police officers, and one of them happens to be named Jamie McBride. And I thought, I know that guy. Hey, I know that guy. And I've been threatening to bring Jamie on the show here for several years now. He's been gracious enough. Called him, 2 weeks ago, and I texted you, and you answered me right away. And I said, hey, you got time for a phone call? He sent me a picture of the beach. I'm like, okay, I guess he's hanging out the LA beaches. He's in Hawaii.
Yeah, I was in Hawaii. It was kind of hard to hear with the wind blowing. So yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just sorry you had to put up with that. I mean, I'm just good thing you don't have hair, because it would have messed your hair up, right?
Yeah, but we ended up talking later that day or the next day or something. I think it was.
Yeah, I gave you the weekend to get home, and then I started to aggravate. Yeah, and here's the truth. I mean, he did not hesitate at all. I threw a date out at him, which is right now, and he said absolutely. So, brother, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing that. I've been looking forward to having you on the show for a number of years now.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
The way that I love your background, he's in his office at the. Look at all his challenge coins. I didn't patches. I just noticed.
You know what? Yeah, so that's a sign. There's my daughter up there.
There's Tony. Yep.
Now, I'll probably get yelled at because I don't have my other daughter. My other daughter's on the police department as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she just gave me for Christmas, finally, a picture of her in uniform. I just haven't brought her to the office and hung it up. But she's a lot more reserved than Tony. She has no social media. She doesn't like me posting pictures of her and stuff. But her picture will be up in my office soon. So
yeah. And if things work out right, I hope to get Tony on the show, because we're going to make this a family thing. We got your brother, now we got you. We got to bring in the kids. So, but we're going to get into that. So typically the way we start here, Jamie, after all this silliness, is just give us a little brief background about your life, where you grew up, something about your family dynamics. Were there other cops in your family, brothers, sisters, schools, colleges, anything like that? And then we'll get rolling. So, what you got, brother?
Sure. All right, buckle up. So I grew up in Ventura, California, and I had four siblings, three older brothers and a younger sister. My dad was a biker and a truck driver, just a tough, mean SOB. He had tattoos up and down his arms. He had love and hate on his knuckles. Hated the police. And I remember,
Wow.
my dad was not a friendly guy. We were used to having the police come to our house for domestic violence. There's a lot of that going on. Back then, this is like the 70s, and back then, my mom would answer the door, and literally my siblings were all really close in age, 15 months or less, going up and down. So she had all these kids climbing all over, and the police come to the house, and she might have a black eye or a bloody nose or whatever it might be. And back then, they just said, ma'am, is there somewhere you can go for the night? They didn't arrest my dad back then. That's how they used to handle domestic violence. Of course, O.J. Simpson changed a lot of things, right? So, and that's with my dad in the background on the police say, get off my property and all that, typical white trash, drunk guy, right? So we used to go to my grandmother's house for the night and sleep, or my aunt's house. After a while, my mom, I guess, got embarrassed. So we'd sleep in the car. It became our parking lot. That's, how we did it. And growing up, my dad always carried a gun. So he would cut out a piece of cardboard, put it in his back pocket so you wouldn't see the imprint of his gun. And you remember those cheap little plastic things you buy from Pep Boys that on the floorboard of a car over the hump, there used to be like a coffee holders and this little flap to push up. Yeah. So he used to go, he used to yell, Jamie, I'd come out of my bedroom scared, thinking I did something wrong again, right? And he'd always say, and I was probably about 10 years old, and he'd say, hey, go out to my car, get my gun, don't pull the trigger. That's what he always said. So I'd go out to his car, get his gun, bring it to him, he'd download it, put it on the coffee table, and pass out. So that's kind of how we grew up. So police in our house, in my dad's eyes, wasn't looked upon very well because, my dad, my mom showed me some newspaper clippings of my dad, and they got married when she was 17 and he was 18. And she, when we got older, she brought out these newspaper clippings. She had them all scotch taped up, all yellow faded and stuff. And I remember it says, Jamie McBride, 18, arrested for a gang fight, armed with a file down bayonet. Another article, he'd be involved in a gang fight and he was armed with a chain. That was my dad. I remember thinking, because again, we didn't have that. My mom was great, but my dad was that guy that struck fear in you. If you're walking home from school, you saw my dad struck, but it's just like, oh shit, dad's home, because it was that kind of environment. But I remember thinking, I'm never going to get tattoos. I don't want to look like him or anything. And now here I am, with all these tattoos, right? So, and I remember he's the type of guy that, and we all know these people, that all he drank was beer. And so you would have that smell of sweat and beer just kind of coming off him. Those people I'm talking about. He's a functioning alcoholic. And I remember he used to go to our baseball games when he was in town, because sometimes he'd do long haul truck driving, and always drunk. And I used to be so embarrassed because my dad was the only guy with tattoos. And back then in the 70s, the only people with tattoos were criminals and bikers. It's not like now where you got hipsters with tattoos and everybody else. So that was kind of the environment growing up. So it was kind of a shock, I guess. My parents eventually separated, due to the violence when we got a little bit older. So by the time I applied for the police department, he was out of the house. I applied for LAPD, and then I got hired. And then my brother, Eric, was getting ready to get out of the academy. Out of the Marine Corps. And he took his test. So we were scheduled to be classmates. And then the Marines kept him in longer for 8 more months because of Desert Shield, the Desert Storm. And then when he got out, there was a hiring freeze. And then he applied to San Bernardino Police Department. He got hired within a month and a half. He's in the academy. I mean, that's quick. So he did his career there, did very well. Obviously, I'm still in my 34th year with Los Angeles Police Department. And then I have 2 daughters in the job. And it's kind of interesting how that happened. So my daughters are about 15 months apart. And when my oldest daughter, Jackie, was starting her first year in college to be a nurse, I looked at Tony, who at the time was 17, and I looked at her, and I got to be honest with you, she's not college material, right? She's more like dad, right? And then my daughter Jackie's more like her mom. And so I looked at Tony when she was 17. I go, so what are you gonna do? And she looked at me and she goes, I think I'm gonna join the Peace Corps. And I'm like, yeah, that's not an option in this house. I said, why don't you go think about that and get back to me? Yeah. So she goes back later on and she comes back to us, Dad, I think I want to be a police officer. I said, okay. I said, as soon as you turn 18, I'm going to take you down. You're going to take the test and become a reserve police officer. So she's like, okay. So I took her down, got her a nice little business suit for the females wear. And after for her interview, she went down, became a reserve officer at 18. She actually became the class leader of her class at 18 years old, which is surprising because when you're in the reserve academy, you have people that they can be 50 or 60 years old in the class. Sometimes you do. So here she is, 18 years old, leading people that I think there was a judge in her class that was like in his 50s. She did very well. She ended up being top shot in her class. And a lot of people ask, because people that know my daughter, Tony, she's a very good competitive shooter. And they assumed that I took her out a lot. And I only took her out once when she was 13. And we took her on steel targets. I saw the video, and she's nailing steel targets her very first time out. And,
Wow.
And it was just a natural. And then plus the guidance of the LAPD firearms unit. They are very good at what they do. They're very good instructors. So Tony ended up being a top shot of her reserve class. And then I told her, I said, hey, at 20 years old, you're going to take the full-time test and go on full-time. Because back then you could come on at 20, right? So she goes, okay. So she comes on at 20, and then goes through her academy class, ends up as top shot again, out the military guys and everybody else. And she's kind of a natural with it. And then she started her career. And Jackie, by this time, was working as a nurse at Huntington Hospital in Pasadena. And she went through COVID. And anybody in nursing or in the medical field during COVID, I mean, it was just crazy. So she went through COVID, and she's like, hey, I want to join the police department. She was a sheriff's explorer back when she was 14 to 18, so for 4 years. So she switched careers and came on as a LAPD, and she's currently working the homicide unit, their video unit. So, and then I have cousins on the police department. You tell everybody, I go, we're Irish, so we have two choices: either be an alcoholic or become a cop, and sometimes both. But so that's how the McBrides ended up in law enforcement. So
That's not the story at all I expected to hear. I got to ask you, when you were in high school, did you play any sports?
Okay, so I tried out for the baseball team in 10th grade and made the team. Back then, my brother Eric, I'm the fourth boy, so I got all the hand-me-downs. And so I ended up with his spikes, cleats, and there were spikes back then. The year that I made the team was the first year they switched it and outlawed the spikes. So I'm on the team, and the coach is like, hey, I can't play you unless you have the other cleats. I can't play you in spikes. Well, we couldn't afford cleats, so I ended up quitting the team because I couldn't afford the cleats. So, and then from there, my brother Eric was a pretty good pitcher back in the day and stuff, but we didn't have that luxury of having parents to buy us our cars and everything. So if we wanted a car, we had to actually go out, buy it, pay for our insurance, pay for the gas. So Eric stopped his high school career so he could go work 2 or 3 jobs to buy a car. And then I ended up, getting a car. My parents or my mom was like, hey, if you get a car, you got to pay for everything. So that kind of stopped our playing days in high school anyways, because we all wanted cars back then. Not like now where the kids, they don't want to get a license until like 18 or 20 years old. Back then, we're like, dude, give me my license. I want to get out there and get a car. So hey, I made the team, but didn't play because I ended up leaving. And then from there, I ended up getting a car and had to work to pay for it.
Yeah. How old were you when you applied for LAPD? Or you went to LASO first, right? The sheriff's office.
Well, no, it was Ventura Sheriff. So I went to the Reserve Academy for Ventura Sheriffs. And back then, remember, you could be a full-time police officer at 18 years old in California. Now, some agencies didn't hire you until 21, but there were some agencies that hired you at 18. The sheriffs at the time were 19. So I went to the Reserve Academy. It was kind of a fluke how I ended up with LAPD. One of my classmates from the sheriff's department goes, hey, I took the LAPD full-time test, and they got a big expo this weekend. You want to go with me? And it was on the weekend. So I'm like, sure. I was 20 and a half. And I didn't know shit about LA because I'm from Ventura. So I didn't know anything about LA, And so I'm like, yeah, sure. So when you go to the Sheriff's Academy in Ventura, back then, it's different now. It was one little building. And you go to the LAPD Academy, and I'm sure you've been there, right?
No, I haven't been there.
Okay. Next time you come down, I'm going to take you there. So it is the wow factor, right? You walk up and it's like TJ Hooker, the opening credits. You see the big towers and the Los Angeles Police Department. And I remember looking like, this is the big leagues here. So we walked up and we got to the field, and they had a big expo going on. They had the air unit there, the K9, the SWAT, and all that stuff. So we're looking around, and then finally there's this guy in Class A uniforms walking, and he's leading a long line of civilians. At the end was a sergeant in Class A. And he looks at me and my buddy, and he goes, "Did you guys take the test yet?" My buddy goes, "I did, but he didn't." The sergeant walks over, grabs me by the elbow, puts me at the end of the line. He goes, "You'll be done in 45 minutes." And I remember marching at the end of the line. I remember marching to take the test. I look back at my buddy, and I'm like, whatever. And
What just happened?
And literally that's what happened. So I had no intentions on coming to LAPD. It turned out to be a great move because there's a lot of stuff that happens in Los Angeles. But yeah, I had no desire. And going back, I just want to add this because you talk about funny stories, and I tell the story quite a bit because a lot of people come into law enforcement, they don't know what to expect in the academy. Now, any sheriff's academy, probably to this day, is probably still tougher than most police academies because now they're getting kind of watered down and touchy-feely, and call it hazing, we call it tradition, right? But in '89, when I went to the sheriff's academy, the second week of the academy was the first day wearing uniform. And that's the day you have to line up on they call it the pad, which is this little asphalt area behind the building. So we're locked up in the pad in our first day in uniform, and all the TAC officers are running around. They're just yelling at people, and it's part of the game, right? I remember looking to my left, I saw this female, she's getting yelled at, and I saw her take a couple steps out of line. So I'm looking at her in my peripheral, right? And I see her moving her shoulder, so I knew she was crying, right? But once she stepped out of line, now all the TAC officers focused in on her, and they're like piranha on her. So next thing you know, she steps back in line, and then at lunch break, we end up asking, "Hey, what was that all about?" She goes, "Man, I was going to quit. Then I realized I carpooled. I didn't have a ride home, so I got back in line." But the funny part about that was, but the funny part about that whole time right there, at one point they said, "Everybody fall out for a 2-minute head call." So we had 2 minutes to go to the restroom. Well, in the Sheriff's Academy, you got to march to the restroom. By the time you get to the restroom, 1 minute's already down because you had to march, calling the files from the left and everything. So we walk into the bathroom, everybody's bumping into everybody, trying to use the bathroom and do whatever. And somebody softly goes, "And this is a bunch of chicken shit." Everybody's like, yeah, chicken shit, whatever. So we get back in line, we get back to the pad, we're all locked up, and there's no TAC officers. It's quiet. And it's just us locked up. I'm like, where's all the DIs and TAC officers? Right? And so for a good 45 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're locked up in detention and it's quiet, it's a long time. Next thing you know, the double doors kick open, all the TAC officers come screaming out. And I remember seeing Deputy Miranda. He's a white guy. He had beet red. His veins are coming out of his neck. He's screaming. And they're running up and down the aisles. They're like, "Who said this is a chicken shit academy? Who said it?" Well, what we found out later was they used to send somebody to the window and listen, right? And they heard somebody say that. So finally, after they're done yelling at everybody for another 5 or 10 minutes, they go, "Fine, because nobody's going to admit to saying it's a chicken shit academy." They go, "When you come back next Monday, you will bring a bag of shit with you." And he goes, "I don't care if it's his shit, her shit, or cat shit, or dog shit, but no chicken shit. This is not a chicken shit academy." So Friday comes around, and we're kind of looking at each other like, "Was he serious? Do we got to bring a bag of shit with us?" But of course, remember, this is 1989. You're not going to go up to the TAC officer and go, "Sir, do we really got to bring a bag of shit?"
Right.
So everybody brought a bag of shit the following week in a Ziploc bag. And so halfway through the day, they didn't ask for it. And finally they go, "Everybody fall out for a shit inspection." So here we are in a formal inspection, and then and nobody's laughing, right? You can't laugh. They're like, "Present shit." So everybody's like, and they're holding a bag of shit, right? And they go down the line and they do a uniform inspection. Finally, they go, "McBride, what kind of shit did you bring me?" I said, "Dog shit, sir." He goes, "What kind of dog shit?" I go, "A Labrador Retriever." "Good." And he moves on. But I tell everybody, I go, you'll never see that in today's world now, right?
Oh my gosh.
And we had a lot of things that happened in that academy and the LAPD academy that I look back with fond memories because, when we started the Sheriff's Academy, and although it was a reserve academy then, we started out with 50 some people, graduated 24. So you have a sense of pride because you made it to the finish line. And same thing with LAPD, in 1990. And so when people hear some of our recruits nowadays are complaining, they made me do push-ups too long, or they kept me past 2:30, so I went overtime. you go in there, you get paid for 8 hours. They might keep you for 10 back then, right? You don't say anything. You're just happy to have that job. And
Right.
back then, I know you'd agree with me. We would have done this job for free.
Yeah.
It was that much fun. But that's kind of how I came to LAPD and some of my academy stories, which I like I said, I look back with fond memories, and I tell people, stop saying it's hazing. It's just called tradition.
It is. It's, you know what? You got to earn respect. You got to pay your dues. And when you get out there, you think everybody's going to accept you immediately. No. Nobody. The experienced cops aren't going to trust you when you first get out there. They got to see what you're made of, and can you get in a fight and take a punch, and can you go into dangerous situations? Will you take care of your brothers and sisters? Will you respond to the call for help? There's a lot of things you got to do to earn that respect. So I think there's one other. I didn't know this until I was doing research on you here this morning. I think you got another family member that you didn't tell us about, maybe a half brother.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you this. So that's all over the internet, right? No relation. It started out by, I guess, somebody just said, God, he looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? And so next thing I know, it is on. I mean, if you Google it, it's on all kinds of websites. And so it's funny is he shoots from time to time at Terran Tactical, where my daughter also is an instructor out there. And I told him, I said, next time he comes down, let me know. 'Cause I'm gonna come out there. We're gonna take some pictures together of my long lost half brother.
Yeah.
But no. So there is no relation. But everybody says that we're. In fact, if there's a day literally that goes by where somebody in the public who goes, you look like, I hear it probably daily for 15 years.
You actually
that's why
do. You do.
Yeah. So that's, I think that's how it started. So don't trust everything on the internet. So like it says, I'm 5'11", I'm probably not. So.
Well, where I found this was I pulled up your IMDb online, your, what is it? Internet movie, whatever it stands for.
Internet database or something like that.
Yeah. And in the trivia section, it says Jamie McBride is Stone Cold Steve Austin's half brother. And then it's got a couple of, and then it talks about the real star of the family.
Yeah. Tony's a star. I'm just a supporting cast. So
I got to ask you though about Tony, and we're going to get her on the show here, I hope, eventually. That girl's busy. I know she just got married, but she married a fireman?
You know what? Every now and then somebody has to pick up the JV team and lift them up a little bit. No, but he's a great kid. I'm very, when you have kids and anybody that's a father or a mother will understand this. All you hope is that your kids marry somebody that's going to take care of them, right? And he's that guy. So he's a very good kid. I'm very, very fortunate. And then my other daughter's dating some kid, and he's a very good kid too. And he's a police officer. She married the A team, or she's going to marry the A team. So it's we're very fortunate. I busted his balls a lot about being a fireman. Like he's like, I work overtime. I was tired. I'm like, from sleeping too long.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones that we don't get to sleep when we work. But yeah. She married a fireman, but he's a good kid.
I started out as a city cop in a small town in West Virginia. We had 35 guys, but when they built a new police station, built a new city hall, the police station was over top of the main fire station. There was 2 other substations out throughout town there, and we had a weight room back in the locker room. So like 3 a.m., you really feel the need to go in and lift weights and maybe let them hit the floor when everybody's sleeping.
Well, you know what we used to do? It was always that love and hate relationship with the fire department, right?
Yeah.
And so back when Mike Tyson was in his prime and knocking people out, one of the firehouses paid for the Tyson fight. So, of course, we go over there to watch it, and then they get a call right before it starts. Well, Mike Tyson was doing what, 58-second fights back then? Yes, in a minute. So we're sitting there, always got those big, comfortable chairs at the firehouse. So we're sitting in it. All the fire guys are gone. Dude, it's like he knocked them out in less than a minute. So they come back. We're all yelling like, "Oh, that was a great fight!" They got so upset with us that we got to watch what they did. But and then at Newton, we used to have our station on Newton Street, and then we moved to 34th and Central, a little bit further south, and it's directly across from I think it's Firehouse 14. So what we'd do is when they're out there cleaning their rigs and everything, we'd launch water balloons over there and hit their rig. So, and mostly it's all the new guys anyways. What are they going to do? You just hey, dry it off. But it's always that little love and hate, playful fighting with the fire department.
Yeah, it was when I was a city cop. I made $9,600 a year. This was back in '75, believe it or not, the mid to late '70s. I know I'm an old man. I know you didn't think I was, but I am. And I ended up working for one of the firemen who was an electrician. So off duty, I was an electrician's helper working for a fireman. And ended up being best friends. He took
Yeah.
care of me. You'd work in the morning, you'd work your ass off. He'd pick you up at home. You'd work your butt off in a house, either a new house or rewiring a house. And then about 11:45, we go to a bar somewhere. We'd have burgers and beer, and then you'd have a couple beers, and after that, you get a little sleepy. And then I got to go to work at 4 p.m.
Oh
So
yeah.
you had to
Yeah.
really control your intake to make
Yeah.
sure things
But
went right.
it's that camaraderie, right? So
It is.
it's a camaraderie. But we even mess with other police agencies, which I'm sure you guys did too. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, for example, we'd be a jail division for LAPD, and CHP and other agencies would come in and book their bodies at our jail. And so we always mess with the CHP, right? We go grab a couple of pebbles, pop off a hubcap, throw it in there. They start driving away. It's just they can't figure out what's wrong with their car. So we used to do all kinds of stuff to the chippies, or what we would do was they always, we always had beat up cars, and they'd roll in their fancy new cars. And so we'd take off their hubcaps, put our shitty ones on their car, and take their hubcaps from our car. I mean, it's just that camaraderie,
It
thing of
is.
what we do.
It is. And that's, I mean, so the chippies are the equivalent of troopers in other states.
Yeah.
And a trooper's car never gets dirty.
No, it's clean. Their cars were always pristine, and that's why we're like, well, you're going to come to our jail. We got to get something out of it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's this is bringing back so many good stories. Just that's what you miss when you go into retirement. It's the camaraderie.
Well, you're gonna have to have me back on when I retire, so I can tell you some good stories.
Yeah.
Because there's some stories I can't talk about until I retire. So
Understood.
Yeah.
So you're in Newton Division. Where is that in LA?
Well, I was in Newton, but Newton's located in South Central Los Angeles. So you got the nickname of Shooting Newton. It was established in 1925, and people think that the police officers started calling it Shooting Newton. It wasn't. It was actually the citizens back in the day from all the shootings that occurred, and it just kind of stuck. So Shooting Newton is the nickname for the station. And of course, some of the brass, once they promote, they're like, "Oh, you guys can't say Shooting Newton. You can't have anything at the station that says Shooting Newton." But yet they have the jacket in their closet when they work there.
Yeah.
So, but now that they got a little stars and bars on their collar, they got to play the game, I guess. But it's just it was a fun division. I worked there twice, and I worked 77th before that. I ended up at Newton, and Newton was just a great place to work. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff, shootings all the time, especially in the 90s. That back in the 90s, the city had over 300 and some homicides. It was crazy. And Newton Division, you're jumping from one shooting to another shooting to another shooting. It's just, crazy.
And I can see you're one that follows orders because I see your shirt on, Shooting Newton.
Yeah. So, you know what? I made this shirt. It has a logo on the back, and I made this shirt like 20 some years ago, and we sold it to the guys at the station, and they still want the shirt. So they'll ask, "Hey, can you make some shirts up for us?" And all the money they make on it goes up to the station fund to buy stuff, which is great. In fact, I had another shirt from Newton, and they go, "Hey, can you still make a print of that one?" That's another 20-year-old print. So I took it down, printed that up, and they still sell that today. So guys like the nostalgic part, I guess.
Absolutely. What's the significance of the 13?
Okay, so like, you ever heard of 1 Adam 12?
Mm-hmm.
So the 1 is Central Division. That was the first division established. 13 was Newton was the 13th division established. So that's how you can tell when something was established, is by the number. So the earlier ones, like Rampart, was number 2, so they were the second division, and then 3 would be Southwest, and then so on, and we were the 13th division.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. So you're not, where are you assigned now?
Okay, so so I used to work this one unit as a plainclothes assignment where we had a lot of informants, and I was the supervisor of the unit, and I had 3 police officers that worked under me, and we were doing a lot of good work, and we were getting 20, 25 kilos of coke, 18 pounds of meth, a shitload of guns. I mean, you name it, we're pulling it in, and it's just 4 of us. And at one point, somebody alleged some misconduct, which was total bullshit on us. So the department had undercover internal affairs follow us, off duty and on duty. And I remember driving home one night, I'm looking in my rearview mirror, and I see some headlights. I'm watching the movement. I'm like, well, this is the same shit I do at work. So I go, it's gotta be internal affairs or something. So I just encountered surveillance on or counter tracking on them, and made them look stupid. Long story short, They ended up benching us all for 2 years while they conducted their investigation on us. No public contact. At the end of the 2 years, they ordered me and one of my police officers to a Board of Rights, which is like an administrative hearing, to try to terminate us. And within 2 weeks after doing that, the department came back to us and said, hey, we'll give you a settlement offer. If you cop out to the allegations and take a demotion, you can come back to work. And I was like, well, you got to understand, LAPD, it's a big department, and we have a lot of issues here. And they did just over 2 years of an investigation, and they came up with goose egg. But now, since they had us benched, they got to show some kind of substance for all this manpower, right? So they trumped up some charges. They sent us home, thinking that we're going to get terminated. And then when they offer you a settlement without your attorney even asking for it, that means they don't have shit, right?
That's when you know you got them.
Yeah. So at the time, I had 24 years on. I was already vested for a pension. And so I told my attorney, I said, listen, I don't care about suspension days. I said, but if I don't have my rank, you can tell them that I'll take it to the box, right? And then the police officer, he had like 11, 13 years on at the time, whatever it was, with small kids. So he took a deal because he's like, dude, I got to get back to work. I can't afford to gamble. And I get that, So I went, so then they relieved me of duty for 6 months, no pay. I go to my hearing, but, prepping for this hearing, my attorney and I listened to every minute of every audio tape. And we found evidence that the Internal Affairs hid that would exonerate me. Okay. And so we went to our hearing, and I'll just give you a little tidbit on this. So when we went to the hearing, my attorney goes, Sergeant so-and-so, who's this sergeant from Internal Affairs, who was kind of cocky and arrogant at the time. He got humbled very quick. She goes, did you frame allegation number 2? He goes, yes, I did. She goes, let me read that into the record. And she reads it into the record. She goes, well, I interviewed Detective so-and-so from another police agency, and he said this, 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 and this. I'm sorry. She goes, you interviewed him on this guy, and he said this and this. Didn't he give you that information prior to framing this allegation? And you see him going like, oh shit, right? He goes, yes. Well, that information exonerated me, right? And she goes, well, if you had that information prior to framing this allegation, why'd you frame this allegation?
Yeah.
And he starts stuttering. He goes, I don't know why. And I'm looking at the captains who are sitting on, there's a 3-panel board, right? They're like they say like 3 judges, and they're looking at each other like, what the hell's going on here? So then my attorney goes, did you frame allegation number 3? She does it again. And then before she had a chance to ask the Internal Affairs investigator, why'd you frame this allegation? One of the captains yelled, why'd you frame that allegation? And he's like, I don't know why, right? So that's how my hearing went. So when I came back to work, after I kicked him in the nuts, when I came back to work, this one deputy chief who later got terminated, or he retired in lieu of, because he was doing some dirty stuff. He was upset that I beat him. And so he tried to mess with my career a little bit. And just at that time, somebody walked by my desk and put a flyer on there that they're running for league director, which is for your union.
Mm-hmm.
And a buddy of mine, Craig Lally, who's now the president of the union, was currently a director. So I called him up. I'm like, hey man, I go, this whole director thing, I go, what do you guys do, man? Do you take care of cops? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, cool. So I hung up. I filled out the paperwork because it was still open. I submitted it, and then it goes out to our membership, which is, we represent the ranks of lieutenant on down. So all the members vote, and I won. And so since then, so it's going on almost 10 years now.
Wow.
It's a 3-year term. And I went there. And the reason why I did that is because when you become a league director, we're the only 9 employees out of over approximately 9,000 that are on what we call release time. And so even though I'm still a detective, I still get my check, it goes toward my pension and all that stuff. I don't do any police stuff currently. I do all union stuff. So that this way, this allows me, if you've seen some of my interviews on Fox and some of these other news outlets, I talk about the chief, I'll talk about the mayor, I'll talk about the governor, and I don't get any repercussions because I have that protection of the union to go out and do that. So I end up securing 3 re-election bids. And so I'm currently in my 3rd re-election, so it's my 4th term. Nobody challenged me, which is good. So I just started my last term as a director because I'll probably retire at the end of this term. Yeah. So currently I'm at the league. So we call it the league. It's called the Los Angeles Police Protective League. Mm-hmm. Everybody just refers to it as the league.
Got it. And I saw, I think the last thing I saw, you were a vice president, but now you're the president of it, right?
No, I'm just a director. We have Craig Lowry's the president right now.
Okay.
Every year it's up for whoever wants it. Craig's doing a great job, so we just leave Craig in it right now, and he's running it. Craig has, gosh, 42, 43 years on the police department.
Wow.
So yeah, so there's a lot of history. He has a lot of relationships with people, which is good. And we have a pretty strong team right now, so that's good for us, and it's good for our membership.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure why they would pick you, because I mean you seem awfully bashful. I mean, it's kind of hard to get you to come out of your shell.
So what they do, so my job at the union is to be that guy, right? So if there's somebody that needs to be called out, I'll be doing the media on it, and I go out there and I called Mayor Garcetti before that he had mental illness. I've done that. I said Chief Moore had early signs of dementia. So I'm the guy who goes out there and kind of does that, and then the other directors come behind me to kind of, hey, yeah, Jamie's kind of out of control, but let's see what we can do to work on this issue here. But that's kind of my role in the union is to be that guy, which is fine with me.
Yeah. Well, everybody needs to be held accountable. The police officers are held accountable, and leadership needs to be held accountable as well.
Yeah, and so with a city like Los Angeles, we always have issues. So the bigger the department is, the more issues you have, and so we have a lot of issues with command staff currently that we're dealing with on the union side to try to take care of our membership. So it's always busy.
Hey players, this is the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out as always on Tuesday. In the meantime, Game of Crimes is now posting interview videos on YouTube. You can find those at Game of Crimes Podcast, and I ask that you click on the subscribe and like buttons. On social media, check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Game of Crimes Podcast, and on X at Game of Crimes. Also on Facebook, type in Game of Crimes fan page and join us for some fun. Our website is gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot more information there, including all our episodes, the book list, which contains the books written by our guests, Game of Crimes merchandise, and more. And for more content, join us on patreon.com/gameofcrimes. I have several monthly episodes that range from silly to serious, so come on over and join the fun. In the meantime, everyone stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow for part 2.